Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Tripti. So good afternoon, everyone. I would spend some time on laying some foundation on CBAM and why is it important and what are the regulations. So I will keep it detailed, still at a level whereby it is relevant and not very detailed as well. So we all know what CBAM is, so I'll not spend time on this, but essentially when European Union was looking at imposing carbon tax within their own ecosystem, they wanted to ensure that whatever imports are coming into European Union are also accordingly taxed so that the domestic firms are not at a disadvantage. So there is a tax mechanism which has been put in place, which the importers in European Union need to submit. So the first important call out is the obligation for CBAM is the importer sitting in EU who is taking goods from us, from India, we are the exporters. The obligation stays with them and they need to be filing the details with the EU registry. And in the process, whatever CBAM charges, taxes they end up paying, they would end up passing it on to us. So that's how the whole method works. It is applicable for six industries so far and listed below. And of course, the ones relevant for our conversation today would be iron and steel, aluminium. But CBAM is starting off with these six industries, and the ambit and the scope for CBAM will keep increasing. Now, who is, CBAM, is it relevant for which all industries? We talked about it, but who exactly are the direct impacted parties? So essentially, two set of impacted entities, I would say. So all companies that are directly exporting to EU. We we know that there is a tax, the importer has to pay that tax. However, it's also important for entities that are supplying to companies that are exporting to you. And we'll shortly talk about the fact that it is also now cascading in the supply chain, and it is always a good idea to stay updated, be ready, because if it's not coming today, it will be coming sometime very soon. So these are the two set of companies groups that would be impacted by the CBAM regulation. Now, just a quick timeline in terms of how it all started. It started in October 2023, and it continues until we are right now in the transition phase. And in the transition phase, we are all expected to keep filing the CBAM report on a quarterly basis. Starting 1st of Jan 2026, the tax implication of CBAM will start to get accrued. So till end of 2025, it's mandatory that we file this every quarter. And when we say we file this, we have to, in a specific format, and we'll discuss all of that, we have to pass on those details to our importer, and the importer ends up filing. There are also methods now being explored where can the exporters directly file it, but the process so far followed is we need to share it with the importers and it gets filed by the importers there. Now, dipping into each of the phases a bit more at length. So as we are in the transition phase and we are talking about the CBAM regulation, which is the implication or the tax liability has not started for us so far. We are, as we said, we are in the phase where we are expected to file CBAM, share the details, do it quarter on quarter. It is not an optional activity today because there are penalties and regulations and fines also, if found out, if figured out, applicable. So the whole idea of this phase is that every exporter to EU starts to get aligned with this whole regulation and starts to put their data foundation and tools and templates in place so that they can abide by it. So this is a warm-up phase whereby everyone is gently nudged to start to file it. As I said, it's not optional. Every quarter it is mandatory. And European Union is also taking this opportunity to go through the tons of data that's coming. and also kind of understand the different nuances basis the data. So this is all non-tax phase, I would say. We are not paying tax until end of 2025. Now, one other thing which has started from January 2025 is the fact that the whole calculation of CBAM has to be activity based. What does that mean? It means that so far, until December 2024, we could have taken the total raw material that we are taking or exporting and multiply it by an emission factor, and we could have got the corresponding emissions for the goods and products that we are exporting. However, starting 1st of Jan, we have to go back and get the actual data from our suppliers as well. So this is activity based, whereby it is just not the activity that we have within our boundaries, but we also go back and take at least the activity details from one supplier, take their emission details from one supplier. So this has been the mandate from Jan onwards, where we go back in the value chain, we go back in the supply chain as well to get those details. We talked about the fact that the compliance responsibility is with the importer, but of course the liabilities start to get cascaded to the exporters as well. Now, very important is the definitive phase. How would things change once we get into 2026? So first and foremost, the financial implication will start to be effective from 1st of Jan 2026. One of the interesting things or important things is to know the fact that this will effectively increase the cost of product that we are selling in the range of 30 to 40%, because the tax ends up being significant. And if we were to add the cost of the tax, which eventually comes back to us, our effective cost of product goes up, and that in a way reduces our competitiveness in the market. So it is also imperative to keep looking at methods of reducing this. But step number one is to at least ensure that there are no further penalties and we are not losing business by adhering to the fact that we are providing these details. Few other details like starting 2026, the filing of the CBAM certificates, which is essentially the amount of goods that we are exporting, there is a corresponding emission to it. This is the corresponding emission. There is a factor by which we need to multiply. EU provides that factor. We get our total CBAM obligation. We need to file or we need to pay for those CBAM obligation every quarter to the extent of 50% of the total emission that we have. So every quarter we have to calculate our CBAM, pay the obligation to the extent of 50% of our total emission, but we don't need to file it. It stays with us. When I say us, I'm always implying the importer. Importer has to be doing all of these things, but by default, it gets cascaded to us, which is the exporter, which is us, from all the exporters from India. So importer needs to keep paying 50% of the obligation every quarter, which means that every quarter this exercise needs to happen. Then in 2027, the overall obligation that we would have accrued in 2026, out of which 50% we have paid quarter on quarter, has to be finally settled. Now, there has been some relaxation on the timeline for the final settlement that has moved to August 2027, whereby all the accounting for 2026 complete year has to happen, and the submission happens latest by August 2027. However, as I mentioned, that does not absolve us, the importer, from not filing at least 50% of the emission implications. This is a very important concept, which means the summary is that the rigor for quarterly filing has to stay. The other important point is there are some emissions. Again, these are recent developments, which is until 50 tons, there would be exemptions when the export quantity is in that range. Again, just trying to ensure that very small export amounts have been exempted from this. There's also a very important concept, which is the second last point, which is the fact that if a country, which is say India in this case, is paying certain tax in India, the corresponding amount can be subtracted from CBAM when we pass it to our importer. What that means, and which we don't have that mechanism in India today, whereby there are exchanges where the government gives targets to every industry. We have to meet those targets. If we exceed those targets, we can trade. If we don't meet those targets, we are mandated to buy. Similar to CBAM, but this is at a Indian level, India level. Government of India is also looking at having CCTS, which is carbon credit trading system, in place by 2026, so that part of that CBAM which totally goes out of the country will stay back, but to us effectively that amount stays. It's important to know the dynamics in the market. We will end up paying part to the Indian government and the remaining part to EU. 2026, this will all start, but our obligations stay because it's just about where we are paying. The key point here is that we should be ready. There's a lot of these things are happening, and the whole process of being CBAM compliant is not an overnight activity. There is a very systematic way of organizing data, managing data, tracking data. So we always, and this is an educational session here, the whole purpose of us here being here is to make you aware of these things. It's not an overnight exercise. And last point is audit. From 2026, when the actual CBAM financial implication starts, we will also have to engage third-party auditors to ensure that all that we are declaring is getting audited. Which also, again, I would like to then reiterate the point that that means it is just not about filling some document and passing it along. We'll have to stand and defend and ensure that all that we are sharing is auditable. So I'll take a pause there. Gaurav, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shwetam, for the insightful overview on CBAM, covering not just the industries required to comply, but also the lesser known nuances and the real complications behind the compliance framework. I think it would be very much better and aligned with the purpose of our audience to hear it directly from one of the industry experts and those who have on the ground been most impacted by these evolving regulations and compliance mandates. So I would request Dr. Pankaj to share his perspective and first-hand experience with the compliances like CBAM and others. Dr. Pankaj, over to you. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible to all of you? Okay.
Yes, you are.
To all my friends, I think we can remove the slide so that I will not be going on with any slide. So once again, good afternoon to all my industry friends. I am also like you. I am also one of the industry person who is doing business, and I feel that in all situation or whenever any new thing comes up, it becomes all the more important for all of us to understand how much is it going to impact my business, how it is going to impact my business, and what can I do so that my business or the business in which we are whatever we are doing, we are able to increase that business. So what I'm going to do in the next 8 to 10 minutes is that I'll be speaking directly from my heart. So I'm not going to speak about any policy matters which Shwetam and Neha is going to cover, and I'm not going to tell you about some compliance rules or even some numbers or scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Although I'm a doctor in sustainability, but I think this particular talk will be coming pure from my heart. For business to grow, one of the most important things is to build trust. I have seen that I started my company Blue Ocean Steels 7 years back purely on the basis of trust. We are apparently growing at more than 40% CAGR per year. But why this whole thing, the word trust or bharosa, bharosa, the Hindi word, is becoming all the more important in today's context? I will just try to explain. Friends, during one of the last sessions, which was offline, I was with one of the founder members of Only Good, that is Rajiv, and after the session, we were during the networking session, with the clients, we were just having a very casual chit chat about CBAM implications and everything related to CBAM. And then one of the participants, he came to us. He said, boss, क्या लगता क्या आपको? Is it going to become applicable this year? I mean, the way it is going on, or things are going to change? I asked him why. Then he said, actually, we have given this to the auditor, but I still feel that, it will take time. And then one more person joined in. Then he said that, I think whatever is going to happen, it will happen to everyone. So we should not be worried what's going to happen. So let's see how it goes on. What I'm trying to say here is that this statement, which was made apparently in a little casual manner by one of the participants and one more joining in, the fact was that this is a very serious matter, but apparently not being taken by the community or some of the members or some of the people so seriously. I will just try to explain the seriousness of this subject matter. When anybody of us, like I am also a steel, aggregator, and we also do some export. When we give any data to our counterpart who is in the EU, you know what happens? This gentleman who is in EU, based on the data that we are giving, he or she has to upload it on the EU portal. This is very, very important. What I'm trying to say is that try to understand, try to put yourself in his or her position. Whatever data either we or our auditor or whomsoever, the sustainability manager or whomsoever gives to the counterpart, to the purchaser or the counterpart in EU, he or she is supposed to upload it. Now imagine a situation that something goes wrong in the data. We can say it very casually, there was some error in the Excel and we are going to resubmit it or something like that. But the implications are going to be far-reaching. Try to put yourself in the position of the EU manager, EU person who is uploading. If he or she observes that something is not right as far as the data that has been submitted, which he or she has uploaded on the portal, what do you think his actions are going to be? If I am going to be in his or her place, apparently I'll say this supplier is not worth relying because my reputation is at stake. I cannot allow this to happen. So this gentleman is going to do everything, or this lady and the other person is going to do everything so that to see that they stop either gradually or at one time doing business with me. Of course, it will depend on how serious the issue is. I will tell you, few more things on this. Once we are giving any data, which is being uploaded, and then this data is being given again, second time, and also the third time, there is a correlation between the data. What I'm trying to say is that when we do it, any increase or decrease in the numbers, it has got a serious, the questions can be asked, why did this parameter rise? We should be in a position to completely justify. Such questions are likely to come. Whatever you had declared in the earlier time, this time it has gone up. What is the reason for that? Why did it go up? And then we have to be completely prepared. You cannot say that our sustainability manager has changed and he gave some other data and now the new person has joined, or we have got a different auditor this time and he has changed the way in which reports have been submitted, because we are in a world where data is being captured and captured permanently. It is not that we will do an erase of the data, we'll erase the data and we'll submit the fresh data. The point which I'm trying to say is that this whole, I'm not trying to blame, but I find that we have a mindset of, maybe just from like one of the approach which quite a large number of us has from our student days is that when finally the exam will come, we will study. We will not be studying for the whole year. That is one approach. Another approach is that we take it very lightly. Whatever is going to happen here, we'll see. Okay. But I think here it is nothing, it is the implications can be quite serious. The implication can be our business itself. Try to understand if the data that we have given, and there's somebody who is finding that the data is not like in sync, or the data looks to be erroneous, apparently the whole business can come to a state. So the big question here is that if this is so serious, then what needs to be done? Because if really somebody can stop buying from me, what needs to be done from me? What needs to be done at my end? I feel that rather than panicking from the situation, we should not, first and foremost, we should not feel that, this is not going to happen. It is going to happen. Maybe sooner or later, it is going to be fully in vogue. But what is important is that we should not be panicking. I personally feel that even like we are supplying to more than 500 people. I'm running a company and selling steel where we sell steel more than 350 to 400 crores. I am still, what I'm trying to say is that I feel that this is a big opportunity. Why I say it is a big opportunity? Because the people who are going to put the papers properly, work judiciously, and see that everything is done with heart, where a trust with which I started the discussion, the trust is created properly. Trust me, the business is going to grow manifold. And that is the objective. We as working as managers, it's our objective to see that whether we are the owners or whether we are working for any company, we should see that whatever with our this thing, the business, it grows and it grows manifold. And that is why it is very important that the numbers that we are giving to in all the, on all the, whatever we are declaring, which the other fellow is important, putting on the portal, we those are right. And I personally feel that this is, rather than panicking with this situation, I feel that this is a wonderful opportunity. Some people may not be following the rules properly. Some people may be taking it very, very casually. But those people who are going to take it very seriously, apparently they are going to be the winners in this case. And one more very important thing, and then I close my talk. I personally feel that quite a large number of people have been talking that Indians are too casual. It really hurts me. It really hurts me. It is time for us to show to the world that we are completely right. We are truthful, and we will make the business which can increase the trust element between us. So my last submission and my last talk to all of you is that let's do it with the best of abilities from our side. Whether you do business, whether you hire only good or not, that's okay. That's a different matter. But with whomsoever you do it, but please do it where India or Bharat, the trust factor of Bharat, it increases, and then we can proudly say that whatever we have done with the best of the intentions, and we have done it right. With this, I end my talk. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Pankaj, for sharing your heartfelt thoughts and your valuable perspective on the compliance landscape. I believe it was very insightful discussion hearing out from Shwetam regarding the compliance part and the on-ground experience of Dr. Pankaj Jain in terms of the compliance part and how we should take this up rather than, I would say in such a short span of time, we have around 50 plus people over here there to listen out in terms of the compliances and to understand what are the nitty-gritty details. I'll not take much time further. Before we move towards our next part, wherein Neha would help us understand exactly the technical aspects of the CBAM compliance and how this otherwise tedious or data-heavy process, which can be simplified through a structured approach through use of platform and all. So I would really want Neha to help our audience understand how the implications of this tedious compliance of CBAM can be, eased off and how it can help out our audiences in terms of reporting their CBAM data to their EU suppliers. Neha, thank you very much.
Thank you, Varun. Um, just to confirm, is the windows visible? Is my screen fully visible, or is this still floating around?
Fully
Visible.
visible.
Okay,
Yeah, visible.
perfect, perfect. I'm using Zoom after a long time, so sorry about that. Okay, and I have been given a very difficult task to basically try and squeeze in all the CBAM information, all the jargons, everything included in a very short span of 10 to 15 minutes. I will try and do justice to where we are. Now, to understand CBAM, I wanted to take a step back and take everyone back to something that is more familiar, like GHG framework. Okay. So I'm hoping that people are more familiar with scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 kind of data that we already are working and collecting on part of GHG framework. Try to map it back to what is required for CBAM perspective. So the key thing, first thing that is important I want to highlight is that CBAM is calculating carbon emissions at a product level. So this is not at an organization level or a facility level. You calculate it for a specific product. Within product, you try and focus on what's happening on your facility. This is installation emissions that we call it. Your scope 1 and 2 become directly part of your installation or facility level emissions. Direct emissions would be something like direct fuels that are being used on your premise for this particular product. Indirect emissions is anything related to electricity that is being used for creating this product. Now, in GHG framework, we also have scope 3. Scope 3 covers a huge, set of emissions coming from your entire value chain, more or less not relevant for CBAM, but any specific emission coming from raw material. So this could be a part of your purchased goods in scope 3. So very small subsection of your scope 3, specific emissions coming from key raw materials used for this product will be part of this. These are typically called precursor emissions in CBAM framework. So this is precursor emissions is nothing but your supplier level emissions that are coming for your key raw materials that are going at this product. Moving on, I want to now show you, just a second, I want to now show you how a typical generalized approach works. Now, this is where Shrutam had briefly mentioned before that so far we are using a bit more casual and generalized approach for calculating CBAM. Going forward from January 2026 onwards, we will have to do it at a activity-based, supplier-specific based approach. So quick comparison between generalized versus activity-based. I want to show you as of today, what we need, like I mentioned, we need precursor level, which is supplier level emissions. How we currently do it is we just take what raw materials are going into this particular product. So product 1, what all raw materials are going, what's its CN code or HSN code also it's called. And for that specific code, I get a specific precursor emission factor. So it could be say 2.39. And I just multiply this emission factor to the raw material quantity that I'm using. I get direct and indirect emissions. Along with that, I definitely need installation level information, which is how much of direct fuels or electricity I'm using at the facility for this particular product 1. And next thing that I need is the product information. How much of it is totally produced and what part of it am I actually exporting, which is going to come as part of the EU compliance, so getting exported to EU. So typically, these are 3 set of informations we need: precursor, supplier level, installation, facility level, product information. And just to reiterate, currently, generalized approach, we were doing it for any raw material that is getting used for this product. We used to figure out its CN code, multiply it to the emission factor. Now, this approach is going to become outdated very soon, and we already have to start setting us for activity-based approach, in which I will now need at supplier level, precursor level, I'll not just need what raw material is used, how much quantity is used, but also to create this raw material, what are the direct fuels and electricity consumed by my supplier to create this. So the difference I want to highlight here is, so far, we had to take guarantee of our own data. We were saying, okay, on my facility, how much fuel or electricity am I using to create this product? What raw material I'm using, multiply it with the emission factor, I am sorted. But this step further is where we have to also now take information from our suppliers, their fuel and electricity usage, and loop it back into our calculation and calculate at the nth supplier base activity level. Now, this is where setting up and collecting information from the suppliers is where we have to start setting up our processes as of today. Some may need education, some may need awareness, but if we want to be completely compliant, beginning of Jan 2026, our focus has to be again and again understanding what processes we have to set up, what kind of information I need, and how I'm going to set it up in the system. Now, I just want to also give you a small glimpse of the kind of complication that goes into calculating a CBAM, carbon emissions for a single product. So say for this particular report, I am saying I'm exporting 3 kind of products to Maruti. So I'll have to do this calculation for all 3. I'll just zoom in on one single row over here. So what our calculation framework looks like. So for a particular product XYZ, I will need precursor information, which is supplier N-1. What supplier N-1 means is, as of today, we just need our first level of supplier going back from our processes. So if my product XYZ is using raw material RM1, raw material RM2, only 2 key raw materials in this particular product, if I need information from these suppliers in terms of, for your first raw material, I have to identify who's my supplier, get their direct and indirect emissions numbers, which means fuel and electricity. Same goes for, then I know another raw material is going in, I'll go to another supplier, get the same information. All of this gets then plugged into my platform or my calculation framework, rather, I would say. And for this product, like we mentioned, we need how much of it was produced in this particular time period, what part of it was exported, and to produce this entire amount, what were my fuels and electricity usage that gives me direct and indirect emissions. Now, there's another level of complexity which I don't want to get into in the interest of keeping it comprehensible to a certain level, is any product goes through multiple set of processes. It could be going through heating and then cooling and then coiling, 5-6 level of processes. So the actual CBAM mandate says that as per EU, we have to give this direct and indirect emissions at the process level. So if your particular product is going through 5 processes in the process of creation and is requiring 2 raw materials, you need your direct and indirect emissions numbers for both the raw materials from 2 suppliers and for all 5 or 6 processes that it is going through. And just to trying to put that calculation in a box, we have to find out SC direct, indirect, which means specific emissions. Specific emissions is nothing but per unit emissions that I am generating on my installation, that is factory level, to produce this product. Then there's next CBAM term that comes into picture, which is SEE direct and SEE indirect. You will see this further when I show you the demo. Now, these are my specific embedded emissions. This not just considers installation, but also precursor level emissions, which is at my facility, how much I'm creating emissions, plus how much emission is my supplier creating. Now, this, if you see, is a combination of my facility plus all the raw materials divided by. So this is again per unit, but inclusive of your supplier precursor emissions. And total is, of course, you do these calculations at the quantity produced. But when you're submitting a report for CBAM, excuse me, when you're submitting a report for CBAM, you do this submission of total direct and indirect emissions for only the quantity exported. So Q1 is my quantity exported. So that is where there's multiple level of complexities and layers that come into picture, for which we have tried to create a platform that will try and simplify and demystify this entire process for you. Just a quick summary before I jump into the platform demo is, want to reiterate that somebody wants to do a CBAM, what's your step 1? Step 1 is identifying, am I even eligible for CBAM calculations? So we have a particular section where when you identify the CN codes of the products that you are exporting or that your client is exporting to EU, it will get you the eligibility. After that, the key process is where data collection, analysis, and validation, like Mr. Pankaj just said, it's about a matter of trust. We can only have authenticated data. So this is the data we need to focus on. product level, quantities produced, exported, at facility or installation level, fuels and energy consumed, at supplier level, again, fuel and energy consumed, and raw material quantity. Now, once I have this data, we do quick SE, direct, indirect, SE, indirect, direct calculations to retrofit it back to the EU guidelines. So step number 4, what I'm going to emphasize is as per the EU report format, we need some more information like what is my per unit electricity consumption, what is my total electricity consumption, what is my precursor electricity consumption per unit. So there are a lot of extra calculations that come into picture when I'm trying to report it as per the format required by EU. Typically, this is the kind of report that gets generated automatically out of a system, which our clients can then directly share with their clients. So if you are an exporter, you can share it back to the importer and they can use that format and that sheet to upload it to the CBAM portal. So with this, I'll take a small pause and I'll jump back directly into our platform. So this is our CBAM module. You'll see this is a 4-step process: eligibility check, you collect information, get supplier data, and generate CBAM report. Now, just a second. Let me create a new report for you and show you. So there are typically 3 methods available. I can use a bulk upload Excel where I've extracted information for a few particular products that I exported. I can generate that. I can do manual update. And also I can do SAP or ERP integrations, which ensures that all the information is continuously coming into my system. And I'm just selecting a client, particular product, some time period, and report automatically gets generated. But for the interest of this demo purpose, I want to show you bulk upload Excel example because that will give you a bit more clarity. This is what my typical Excel looks like for data. We ask for some bit of basic information. What is your company? Where is it based out of? What is your reporting period? Then if you correlate it back to my slides, we're talking about product information. So what are the key products? So we have here 6 products that I include in this report. For this all 6 products, we try and understand how much quantity are you producing, how much quantity are you exporting. Now, once we have established that, we ask for activity data, which is for each of these products. So these are the codes that I use for these products, double pins and volts. So what processes are they going through? How much direct fuels are getting consumed? How much electricity is getting consumed to generate this? Same thing, supplier level data for each of this product. So this is double pin hard. What raw materials are going into it? So let's say 4 raw materials go. Then each of them, for each of this, I need to know what is the amount of direct fuel or electricity again that is going into creating this raw material from my supplier side. Now, once I have this information, this Excel prepared, I just click here, browse the file, upload it, and I say import. Now, all the information that I just show you gets visible on the screen. Okay. Your installation data, you have product information, that will go. So you can just preview this, that everything's imported correctly, activity data, and last but not the least, the supplier data, which is precursor. And I say, okay, calculate my CBAM report. So my report is here, but let me first quickly go to the dashboard first. This is the kind of dashboard that you'll go get for every report that is generated. So if you have multiple reports, it'll come as a list. It'll show you for this report, there were 6 eligible products. What was your total carbon emission, total intensity? Out of this, how much was installation? How much was supplier level precursor? Within that, what was the split for direct, indirect? And which were your key raw materials emitting most of the emissions? Right? So this is a very simplified fashion. You can just download the report from here and send it back to your to the person who's importing goods from you in EU. And if I download this report, report summary looks something like this. Now, this is a bit more detailed because it's more, like I said, in the EU format. Your installation level details, your total direct and indirect emissions. Now, total emissions at installation and precursor level split. SE direct at the report level. SE direct, indirect, this is specific embedded emissions inclusive of precursor. Now, important thing is this is what your clients actually need, which is summary of products. Now they want your emissions at each and every product level. 6 products in this report for each of them. I give you a specific embedded emissions, direct, indirect, total, electricity source, total electricity consumed, direct attribution emissions. So these are extra things that EU guidelines ask for. And same thing, you need to give all this information for all the raw materials that are consumed, consolidated. So we help you to generate this quick report out of the system. The calculations are verified as per the EU compliance. And all you have to do is just either upload your input data, generate your CBAM report, or like I mentioned before, which is what we recommend, we can also do an automated or integrated system with you where we are collecting all the information from your SAP or API integrations. And all you have to do is right before the time that you've submitted, end of the March happens, first week of April can come, click few buttons and just say generate report and you get a report out of it. So that's where we're trying to move. We are trying to simplify, demystify all the calculation and frameworks across the process for CBAM. With that, I'll take it to a close and pass it back to Gaurav.
Thank you so much, Neha, for that insightful walkthrough. I think it really helped bring clarity to the technical side of CBAM, especially around how the calculations work and how businesses can practically approach compliance using a structured framework. I also think like this is one of a thing to understand the regulation in theory, but seeing how it translates into action, it really makes a big difference. So I think there must have been a lot of new things in regards to CBAM compliance that our audience would have been understood post your briefing. Just to give you a brief before we move forward, the whole idea behind today's discussion was to make CBAM compliance easier to understand and more relatable for everyone. So before we jump into our Q&A session, right, wherein what all questions you have for our speakers. So I do want to mention, given the time constraints, we may not be able to address every question right now. So to make sure you still get all the answers you need, I'm dropping a quick link in the chat where you can book a free one-on-one CBAM consultation with the experts as well. So now I would request our audience to go for the Q&A session, whoever has the first question.
Just to add a point, the ways you can embark on the CBAM journey is generally the different ways in which our clients do it is you can hire in-house sustainability team and have them, of course, grounded on data. Data management is very important. So if you embark on this journey through your team, do ensure that there's a lot of focus on data that we are keeping and manage that well. Very, very important, as Pankaj talked earlier, that traceability of data is very important. So when you're setting up teams, ensure that there is traceability and data is managed holistically. You can also go hire external consultants to do this. There are several companies doing this, as is only good, which also play in this space. As Gaurav mentioned, again, our whole intention today is to just educate you and any questions, feel free to, from a solely education standpoint, ping us. Very happy to solve your queries. I know that it's just 5 minutes, so we'll open it for any questions.
Thank you, sir. So now we'll open the floor for questions, if any. So any questions from delegates?
Yes, this side, Omkar Singh from Highway Industry. So, so just Mr. Pankaj has mentioned for the trustworthy data to provide to the customer to put on the portal. So in some of cases, even I was working for one of the RFQ, and our customer is asking for the CO2 emission per part calculation. At that time, we are on just on the RFQ stage, and customer is asking to submit the data. At that time, I don't have the actual cycle time and actual uh, electricity used and gases. So, what can we do for that?
So I'll take that. See, there are two things which are coming up generally that we have seen. In the RFQ stage, we may be checked on our CBAM readiness, where the type of information that you talked about was needed. And the second case where typically we have seen in the RFQ stage now, which the customers are asking for, is also the product carbon footprint. So when they ask how much would you charge me for this product, and second they would say how much would be the embedded carbon in the product that you're giving. So these are the two things typically RFQs have started to ask for. Now, to your question, if we do not have the data that we're talking of, we can go back to the old calculation method and call out very clearly. So what is the old calculation method? We may not have all those details. We would make certain approximations based on the information that we have. Again, there are methods of also making that approximation, staying within the guidelines of EU and making that disclaimer, saying that the approach has been, this has been the approach taken. Generally, the deviation would be in the range of ±5, but it's all about trust and transparency. As long as we declare it, we are good. And then of course, this would also mean that we will start to put those details processes in place so that when a subsequent similar ask is being made, we can provide that information. But see, everyone is going through this, not that you all are alone in this journey. We are putting our systems in process. So at times we can take a high level approach. That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
So is it possible for you to share the presentation shown by Madam Neha?
We will do that, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
क्या अभी मार्केट में कोई एक्सेल बेस्ड कैलकुलेशन शीट्स है जिसमें हम अपना डाटा भरें तो ये अपने आप निकल के आ जाए? कोई अवेलेबल है?
एक हमारा हमने क्या देखा था, एक्सेल बेस्ड भी है. I can share that with you. There is someone who is providing that. I'll share that with you. There are similar lightweight tools as well. आप उसको ट्राई कर सकते हैं. दूसरी चीज जो मैं पहले भी बोल रहा था, तो जो फोकस हमारा रहना है कि अगर आप एक्सेल बेस्ड कर रहे हैं, आप अपना डेटा ऑर्गेनाइज कीजिए प्रॉपरली, जिससे कि आप जब क्वार्टर ऑन क्वार्टर आपका डेटा जा रहा है तो उसमें कोई डिस्क्रिपेंसी नहीं है. बट I had come across someone who is providing an Excel based thing. I'll try to figure it out. मैं आपसे शेयर कर दूंगा. ऐसे भी बहुत प्रोवाइडर्स हैं. हमेशा जब भी आप किसी को सेलेक्ट कीजिए या खुद भी इन हाउस टीम आप रख रहे हैं, निटी ग्रिटी समझना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, बिकॉज 2026 से ऑडिट शुरू हो रहा है. सो अगेन ये दो अप्रोच है. आप अपनी टीम भी डाल सकते हैं या कंसल्टेंट्स भी रहते हैं मार्केट में. जब जहां भी जाए बस आप ये इंश्योर कीजिए कि ऑथेंटिक आउटपुट बाहर आ रहा हो.
राइट.
Good evening, this is Sunil Javadekar from SB Postech. I wanted to know that if we have renewable energy consumption at our end, so how does that help to offset the CBAM or how it is taken into the CO2 offset in the report?
Okay. Neha, did you get that question? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. In fact, when I showed you let me quickly share my screen again. I want to show you. So, just a second. I showed you a sample input file, right? So here you'll see at activity level also, when we are asking for electricity consumption per unit of on your facility, we seek what are the non-renewable sources of energy you're using and what's the renewable electricity sources that you're using, how much are you consuming for each of the products. So now some definite calculations go over there. Now, depending on what source of electricity is being used, there are different emission factors. So as such, there'll be no offset, but your intensity, your indirect emission intensity will be considerably reduced if you are using, in fact, it'll be near to negligible if you're not using red electricity and you're only using, say, solar or wind for that matter. Now, where does it impact? This is where I'm talking about. So on this slide where I showed you, if it's on your factory where you're using renewable energy, your indirect emission numbers will be considerably lower, even if you're using 40% of solar. And similarly, talking same for the supplier or the precursor level. If precursors, your suppliers are using renewable energy sources like solar or wind, their indirect emissions will be considerably lower. So this is where it impacts your total calculations in the terms of specific embedded or specific emissions per unit level. They will come down a lot if you're using renewable sources of energy, which is highly recommended. And I think that's the way to go to control at least a large part of factory level emissions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I would also like to know one more thing. I think Shwetam mentioned the CCTS will offset. What is this CCTS?
So what happens is different countries, European Union has a trading system called ETS, emission trading system. What happens as a part of that, the government gives first sets up this trading system, which is, think of it as an exchange. Every industry is given a target that you are here today and you have to in 1 year reduce it by X, in year 2 reduce it by Y, and year 3 reduce it by Z. The industry level targets start to cascade down at a company level, and every company starts to be running with a target for multi years. And these targets would be realistic, not that in 1 year anyone will expect you to go to zero emission. Realistic target, but there'll be a year on year target. Once this happens, everyone is expected to meet the targets. And companies that meet and exceed the targets, whatever extra that they exceed for that year, they can go and trade it on the system. It has a financial value to it.
Okay.
And if a company is missing the target, the delta, they have to mandatorily go and buy it on that exchange. So today, India doesn't have that exchange. And the Indian government is working very rapidly to put that exchange in place, because if that, and that should come in 2026, once that exchange is in place, if a company is falling below the threshold, that amount gets paid to the Indian government. And when the same company is exporting to EU, that amount which was paid to the Indian government gets deducted from the amount that you're paying to EU. So effectively, the money stays in India. And the same money can be rerouted for initiatives like green steel and other things. So that's the concept. And very quickly, CCTS, which is carbon credit trading system, will be coming up in India as well. 2026 is the slated timeline for this.
Thank you.
Okay, any further question?
Ma'am, how do they take the energy cost? Local values or the costs involved in Europe?
Can you repeat the question, Siva Prasad ji?
No, while considering the costs involved, do they take energy costs in Europe or energy costs in India?
It's India. See, the conversion factors that Neha talked about is created by every region. So all of these are Indian numbers, which gets converted to the corresponding carbon dioxide emission.
In case I'm using wind energy or solar energy, I can take the same cost?
No, so in that case, you are already on green, and accordingly, it will have a very minimal emission to it. See, we are talking of two things here. One is a cost of energy, which is the unit, the price that you're paying per unit of electricity, right? And the second is, given that electricity is going into the manufacturing of your product as an input parameter, given it is green, your output carbon dioxide emission will be lower, right? So any such renewable energy will help you reduce your carbon dioxide emission. Typically, India, we are in the range of 1.8 to 2.2 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of steel produced today. International markets are lower, many places 1.5 and all that. So the moment you become lower in terms of your emission, the tax implication starts to reduce for you. Does that answer your question?
Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, it was disconnected. No issue. I think I understood the answer. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Siva Prasad ji.
Yeah. Any further question, we'll be able to take 2 questions maximum now. So if any questions are there, please ask.
Hi, I have a question. Um, we can see with, a few customers, there are only a few HS codes that fall under CBAM that we're working on right now. So is there any indication when the other HS codes, if at all, will be introduced? And the second part of that is, do we have any indication of what the tariff rate is going to be?
Okay, very good questions, both of them. So indication of inclusion of other HS codes, we do not have a published timeline so far. But the idea is slowly the scope of products coming in the HS code or the HS code relevant for CBAM will keep on increasing. So right now there is no published timeline on when others would come into it. The tariff that you said is also again it's like a stock exchange where we trade shares. Right now the tariff is pegged to the ETS, which is European Trading System, and it is trading somewhere around 80 euros per ton. As is the case with our stock index, where it keeps going up, there are forecasts on how would this also be going up. So the CBAM cost, if we were to do a simulation, and if our emission remains the same, the ETS factor through which we'll have to multiply it to come at the CBAM tax, that multiplication factor will keep going up. Again, the way it is in stock market, we can't say how much will it go up, but it's an open trading system. The credits are getting traded, so it'll only see an upward trajectory.
Okay, so can we assume that, because we have a lot of customers asking us how much are you willing to bear, and there is no clarity at all on these tariffs. So a lot of them assume it's 5%. A lot of people are saying it will be 15 to 30%. So do we have an answer? Because we don't have any clarity until Jan.
No, so what we can assume is that right now, as I said, it is trading at the range of 80. 2 months back, 1.5 months back, it crossed 100. It came down again, and it is in that range today. So we can assume that it'll be in Jan, it'll not go to 150. I would say that, and these are all assumptions, right? We cannot confirm, give a number to it with a lot of confidence. But again, I would assume that it will be maybe in the range of 90s. Again, all assumptions here, but typically the way the index has been moving. However, there has been an aberration. It went above, it went over 100 and it has come down now. So we can't say with confidence where would it stand, but maybe it moves another 10 to 15% from here.
Okay, thanks.
How periodically these tariffs are adjusted? Quarter basis or half yearly or yearly?
So what happens is that you are sending 100 tons or exporting 100 tons, and assuming that you're doing this 25 tons every quarter, you will take the 25 tons for that quarter, you will account for it internally, you will pass that to your importer, and 50% of that tax that needs to be paid is to be mandatorily paid in that quarter by the importer. So you pay 50% of whatever be the tax on carbon quarter by quarter. So you've done that for 4 quarters. So basically for all that you've exported, you have paid 50% of your overall taxes. Then the final settlement happens in 2027 for all that you have exported in 2026. And the final settlement timeline for all 2026 settlement is August 2027. This is when you'll see again how much have you exported by every quarter, how much have you already paid, and the balance is what you would end up paying latest by August 2027.
In that case, he will withhold our payments to certain extent.
You mean to say the importers could withhold your payments?
Yes.
See, that's the assumption here is that if someone is ending up paying for a product that you're sending, the implication of that will get cascaded back to you. Now, again, there's no straightforward answer to it that would the importer pass 100% to you or pass 80% to you. It depends the way you have your relationship with the importer, because that is outside the ambit of European Union. European Union has made this regulation for someone sitting within EU, which is your importer. And the kind of terms that the importers give back to you would depend on how you would like to negotiate it with the importer.
So we have to keep some delta for that.
Sorry, Shiv Prasad ji?
So you have to keep some percentage of amount towards that.
You have to, and if again I was showing a math earlier, there's actually a math that it can actually go to as high as maybe even 35% if your emission is very high, and it can be even say 22, 25% as well. So safely we can say it will be upwards of 20%.
So what I mean is I have to keep that in my balance sheet, no, because we are paying next year,
Yes,
not this
yes,
year.
yes. It'll be good to account for it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Is there any means government of India, because like if the companies, because the Indian steel intensity is almost higher than the compared to other country also, right?
Correct.
So is government of India also facilitating this kind of forging industry or steel sector if they have been imposed by this EU? Because like export is one of the commodity for the tax benefit of the government of India. So is there any government of India is also planning something to pass on to this steel sector or the forging sector?
Yes. So in this budget itself, $2 billion has been kept aside by the Indian government as investments to move towards green steel. Again, we have been talking about electric arc. There is with green hydrogen also becoming more viable now. Hydrogen-based technologies are also coming up. So the government, this is a significant amount which is kept aside. Again, what and how things are being done is to be made public, but interventions and support is definitely on its way from Government of India. I'm sure 2 billion is the number that we read, is the kind of help and support that will go out to the industry.
About green aluminum?
Aluminium, I need to check. I have read this on steel that there is a subsidy on its way, but I have not read anything on aluminium so far.
Okay, so thank you for all such questions. Now I would like to request Mr. Joshi for the closing remarks.
Mr. Ashwini, you are on mute.
So can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shwetam ji. Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks, Ms. Neha and Dr. Pankaj. I think it's very comprehensive and in-depth knowledge you have shared about these CBAM applicability regulations. And as you have also mentioned that this is not only limited to those who are directly exporting, but also the companies who are exporting to those who are exporting, And it looks like that in days to come, it will become like any other compliance, if I'm not wrong, sustainability. And maybe many companies will have to set up the sustainability function like other functions in the company. So thank you very much for this entire session. Very excellently presented by all of you. And I would like to thank all the participants, very active. And it looks like that people are taking it seriously as far as AIFI is concerned. And it is a matter of something which has to be taken seriously. So thank you once again, all the participants. Thank you, Shwetam ji. And I would request everyone who has joined or who have logged off that if there is any further help or support or assistance required, I would request all the members, all the participants, please do not hesitate to contact AIFI. And through only good we can take whatever support you require from AIFI side. So thank you once again, and thank you, Tripti, Rahul, for supporting this event and organizing it today.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.